search someone else. Yes, the defense formally demands a search be conducted. Well, don't say you weren't warned, but your typical Nipponese stubbornness may well land you in hot water this time. Perhaps the lesson will do you some good. Fair enough, I've got nothing to hide. Habe ich nicht search someone else gemacht? Ja. Very well then. Bailiff, conduct a search of the inspector's personal protection. The defense demands a search, but not of Inspector Gregson. What? Now that's all. What's all this? I'm the one you're accusing, aren't I? I thought you wanted to search me. No, Inspector, not you. Somebody else. What's the meaning of all this, eh? Lost it at last, have you, Sunshine? The court shouldn't have to put up with this nonsense. You're being completely irrational. Be quiet, all of you. Oh, Uno's doing what you all told him to do and having the courage of his convictions. So you should respect that and listen to what he has to say in good faith. Because that's the British way. Well said, young lady. Indeed, this court is in awe of the defense counsel's conviction, and eagerly awaits his next words. Conviction? Yeah. You what? Now don't be hasty, my lord. If I'm not mistaken about the things I've seen in court today, I'm fairly sure that I know who has hit disc at the moment. There's only one person it can be. Counsel, of whom do you request a search now? Von Benedict, oder nicht? Von Ashley Graydon?
Take that!
Mr. Ashley Graydon, my lord. The defense demands that he be searched at once. Very well. I presume you will not protest, Mr. Graydon. Au contraire. And so a brief body search was carried out by the court bailiff. A few short minutes later, it was revealed that Mr. Graydon had nothing unusual on his person at all. Shit! Ja! Well, Counsel. Okay. Wer dann? Van Siegs vielleicht? Oder wer? Hat er das Van Siegs vielleicht übergeben oder was?
Take that!
My lord, the defense demands this person. Okay. Oder hat Gina das gestohlen?
Take that!
My lord, the defense demands this person. Okay. Nee. Nee, dann bin ich at a loss. Hat Hurlock das geklaut vielleicht?
Take that!
Nein. Hä? Iris?
Take that!
Nein. Das ist ja echt unglaublich. einer von den beiden?
Take that!
Als ob! Off, my lord, Mr. Nash Skalken. Well, I never. Blimey? Me? Him? Very well then, bailiff. Restrain the witness and conduct a thorough search of his personal effects.
Hold it!
Please, my lord. Inspector. Scotland Yard, has to object to this search.
Objection!
Unfortunately for you, Inspector, your objections carry no weight here. In this courtroom, only the prosecution and the defense have the authority to object. But Lord Van Zieks, I have no idea what forces are in play that might influence your actions. But personally, I have no intention of obstructing the course of this trial. Bailiff, carry out the search. Mal kurz gucken, obstructing. Now hold on a moment, nothing about no disc. Cut it out! Here, my lord. In the witness pocket. I found this. Good lord, that's another music box disc. I don't know nothing about it, nothing. Ist er doch einer der Skalken Brothers? That is a second music box disc left behind by Magnus McGilded. Is it not, Inspector Gregson? Order! Mr. Skalken, what have you to say for yourself? Gordon Bennett, I mean, just Gordon Flamin' Bennett. I swear I didn't know nothing about that. Honest to God. Ist Gordon Bennett irgendwie sowas wie Gott verdammt, oder? Gordon Bennett. Jesus Maria, okay. Counsel, would you please explain what exactly is going on here? The alleged deal, what it was struck, was between this witness and this detective, no. Without question, my lord. Then, for pity's sake, why on earth was this man in possession of the disc that the inspector traded for information? Das frage ich mich auch. Inspector Gregson is a shrewd, calculating man who rarely loses his composure. But at one particular point in this trial... Oh, als ihn so festgehalten hat, natürlich! He exhibited some unusual behavior for a brief moment. I don't recall. What unusual behavior? It was, yes, during my cross-examination of Mr. Graydon. Tell me, Mr. Graydon, when you left the pawnbrokery that night, was it by any chance with a second disc in your jacket pocket? I admit to nothing of the sort. While Mr. Graydon answered my questions, the inspector appeared to have grabbed Nash Skalken by his coat and was shaking him violently. Yeah, he did it! He did it all! Thought me nothing was gonna fall clean off, I did. I was wishing I'd been born as my brother, I was. And what exactly happened to make the detective attack you like that? I ain't got a clue. He just suddenly turned and grabbed me whistle like that and started shaking me. Why the blazes didn't ya mention the third guy when he got ya down the station? That's what he said. He yelled it right down me ear. Oh, he did. Me head's still throbbing now. The way the detective behaved then was extremely out of character. But looking back now, it must have been that he did it. That was the opportunity Inspector Gregson created for himself in order to hide the disc. Well, bless my wig, he hid it! But I'm afraid I failed to comprehend the motive here. If the detective had acquired the disc he was after, why on earth would he then proceed to hide it in another man's pocket? This is a curse of law. He could have submitted the item as evidence. It would appear, my lord, that the inspector was not at liberty to do that. Why ever not? As the man himself revealed earlier, his current assignment has some special conditions. My orders were: recover the medium used to convey the secrets leaked from the Ministry, and do it on the QT. Strictly hush hush. Hush hush, a top secret assignment, is it? As far as we are aware, the information stolen comes from confidential government communications. It would seem that if that information were to be revealed in court as evidence, it would be problematic. Does that sum up the situation, Inspector? I'm operating under direct orders from the Ministry. I'm afraid I'm not at liberty to answer that question. So, realizing there was a chance that you may be searched here in court, you took steps to hide the disc you had acquired from the witness. Ah, does this mean he only pretended to attack Mr. Skulkin in order to get close enough to him, to slip the second disc into his pocket? So it was all a pretense. Well now, Inspector Gregson, and you, Mr. Graydon, are you prepared to admit to the accusation made against you of this alleged deal? Admit to it? Yours truly, please. Mr. Graydon, clearly our Eastern visitor has an uncommonly active imagination. However, there's no proof that I passed that disc to the Inspector.
Objection!
But then, how do you explain the reason why you knew about the peephole? I'm under no obligation to explain. What? Yes, I lied in my testimony. That I admit, so sentence me accordingly. But that is all I admit. Murder, leaking government secrets, striking a deal with a detective. All of it is young Eastern man's fancy. I have no idea what any of that is about. You... What? Well, what about you then, Inspector Gregson? Do you admit to making a deal with Mr. Graydon in order to acquire the disc? Ladies and gents of the jury, as the Scotland Yard Inspector, I will declare this and nothing more. I am acting in the best interest of the country. Whatever I've done, it's been in the name of justice. So, as members of the public of this fine country, I'd like to think that justice will be your guiding light when you're making your decision. This is quite a quandary indeed. Rarely have I encountered such extraordinary tumultuousness in the concluding of a trial. Nevertheless, in the absence of any further evidence to be presented, I believe it is time that we put the matter to the jury for the final leanings. Well now, as a fellow servant of Queen and country, I must say I sympathize with the old inspector. Yes, he's a dependable man, I'm quite sure. In service one becomes a good judge of character. Even crossing your eyes doesn't help when it comes to looking at this case. It's all blurred to me. Well, as a fellow professional, I like to put my faith in the detective, really. Graydon is highly skilled operator. Stop. Currently in presence of idols. Stop. Detective has very much trust on eyes. More than this, I cannot say. I don't believe it. These 6 jurors they are going to believe Graydon. If they declare this decision now. Is Ginny going to be found guilty? If I don't manage to produce some definitive evidence right now, then we're going to lose. Either some proof that Graydon killed Mr. Windybank, or stole those government secrets. Or some evidence to force Gregson into admitting that he struck a deal with the witness. Well then, Counsel, I think it's time to impose on the jurors to declare the final decisions, no? That is, unless you have some compelling evidence you have thus far not presented to the court. If I let the judge call on the jurors to announce the leanings, Gina will be found guilty. So there's no choice anymore, you have to throw some more evidence at them. This is it now. It all comes down to this. Who do I present evidence against? Gregson or Graydon? Oh Gott. Gregson würde ich sagen, oder? Ich habe die Ahnung. Denn was ist, wenn wir Gregson mit dem Manuskript, das ist vielleicht eine dumme Idee, eine sehr dumme Idee, was ist, wenn wir ihm das Manuskript zeigen und sagen, komm, wenn du jetzt nicht die Wahrheit sagst, wenn du jetzt nicht die Truth bittest, dann wirst du schlecht beschrieben, weil das schadet ja actually seinem Ruf. Deswegen bin ich versuche das einfach mal. Inspector Gregson. Inspector Gregson, there's one final piece of evidence I would like you to see. What's that then? If you refuse to acknowledge that you did in fact strike a deal with the witness here today, then you leave us no choice but to examine this piece of evidence thoroughly. Well, go on. This is my last chance. It looks like I'm going to have to force his hand here. One final piece of evidence to get this detective to admit to the deal he's clearly struck with Wade. Ich mach das einfach.
Take that!
What on earth is this, Counsel? Irrefutable proof, my lord, of the co-op dealings that went on between these two men. Or perhaps irrefutable proof of the co-op weapons here. Das hat dann nicht funktioniert. Schade. No. Inspector Gregson. Gucken wir mal. Article report. For shooting photographed music box disc. Sean's pouch. Small music box. Cat fragment. Ich habe keine Ahnung. Windy Bank, Ashley Wade. Gilded case notes. Today's paper. Audit report. Graydon, maybe? Mr. Graydon, there's one final piece of evidence I would like to see. You misguided fool. Whatever you intend to show me now, you'll be wasting your time. I have nothing left to lose. I assure you, I will admit to nothing. This is my last chance. It looks like I'm going to have to force his hand here. One final piece of evidence to get him to admit to the deal he clearly struck on the stand. Boah. Maybe die Zeitung?
Take that!
Okay, nein. Okay. Ich hoffe, ihr habt jetzt nichts dagegen, aber ich werde den Story Mode einsetzen. Ich werde den Story Mode einsetzen, weil ich hier keine Ahnung habe gerade. Story Mode. On. Inspector Gregson, okay. Inspector Gregson. There's one final piece of evidence I would like you to see. What's that? If you refuse to acknowledge that you did in fact strike a deal with the witness here today, then you leave us no choice but to examine this piece of evidence thoroughly. Well, go on. This is my last chance. It looks like I'm going to have to force his hand here. One final piece of evidence to get the detective to admit to the deal he clearly struck with Graydon. Okay. Also jetzt, ich habe den Story Mode off wieder, weil ich denke, das können wir auch alleine rausfinden. Vielleicht. Die Disk maybe? Ich speichere nochmal.
Take that!
Eyes up! Is that Mr. McGillicuddy's music box disc, Council? Yes, the first disc of two, which has already been placed in Mr. McGillicuddy's special music box, ready to play. I think perhaps now would be a good time to listen to the sound produced by the music box again. Only this time, with the second disc we've just discovered set in place as well. Goodness, this disc! Council!
Hold it!
No, wait! I can't let you do that! Ach so, ja natürlich. Weil er die Regierungsgeheimnisse nicht verraten will. Why not? Because it's got nothing to do with his case, that's why.
Objection!
Not true, Inspector. Eh? The defense has already proposed that the sounds heard by the court earlier from the music box were part of the Morse code message. We know that Morse code comprises of two distinct tones. The defense believes that the second disc contains a second tone needed to complete the message. And now we have a chance to confirm that theory. For crying out loud, Sunshine, we're talking about state secrets here. If you go letting the whole courtroom hear confidential information like that, it's treason. Then do you admit the charge? That in order to protect those state secrets, you engaged in unlawful dealings with a witness. You're mad. If you let the secret information out into the public domain, you'll be making an enemy of the entire British government, you idiot.
Objection!
Let's not forget, Inspector, that you, a Scotland Yard officer, leaked confidential case details to a witness. That you continue to lie to the court, and all because by fair means of foul, you're determined to do your duty. Well, by fair means of foul, I'm prepared to do mine. Don't you dare. I will stop at nothing to protect my client. I don't care who I make an enemy of. Damn, we're not gegen die Welt. My lord, if you please, the court must hear the sound made by that music box. Come on, Van Zieks, for Pete's sake, stop him!
Objection!
Inspector, you should know my methods by now. I'm a prosecutor. I'm no Scotland Yard puppet. Ugh. In this courtroom, my duty is to the law, so let me propose a toast. To uncovering the truth by fair means or foul. No! Very well. The defense's stance here and that of the prosecution has been made very clear, I fear. Therefore, in accordance with the defense's request, the court will now listen to this music box as this music box is set in operation once more. This time, with a second disc in place, and both discs playing simultaneously. Oha, die beiden haben Panik, das ist... Oh, listen to that. It's unmistakable now. It's Morse code. Alright, I admit it. Whatever you want. But for the love of God, shut the bloomin' box up. Let me ask you again then, Inspector Gregson. Did you, or did you not, strike a deal with the witness next to you in the stand, Mr. Ashley Gray? Specifically, did you furnish the witness with confidential case details in exchange for this music box disc? Did you reveal the existence of the peephole in the pawnbroker storeroom door, Inspector? I did. Stop! What are you doing, man? It's all exactly like the young Eastern lawyer said. When the trial resumed after the recess and we were stood here in the stand together, that's when he approached me with a deal. Shut up, you imbecile! Shut up! Psst, You there. You are the detective who turned up at the pawnbrokery the other day, aren't you? I may have something you're looking for, Inspector. With me at this very moment. So how about a trade? I suggest you accept. Or information that may make certain individuals uncomfortable will soon become very public indeed. I couldn't let that information become public knowledge, not under any circumstances. So I accepted the man's proposal and told him details about the case that should have put him in the clear. The peephole in the storeroom door and the bloodstains on the overcoat. By giving false testimony, this witness intended to have the defendant wrongly accused of murder. Inspector, you knew that. Yet you still revealed those details to facilitate the witness' perjury. I did. But then it turned out the peephole had only been made that night after the incident took place. Scotland Yard wasn't aware of that, if I'm perfectly honest. Well, Mr. Graydon, what do you have to say for yourself? There's nothing and no one left for you to hide behind. You struck a deal with the inspector in order to escape conviction of a very serious crime. Namely this. You are the third intruder who broke into the pawnbrokery on the night in question. And you perpetrated the murder of the proprietor, Mr. Pop Windybank. Oh. Traitor! Uh-oh. Bailiff! Bailiff! Restrain that man! At once! That's it then. It's all over. Jetzt kommt doch noch was. I despised my life growing up. Those slums are vile places. I was cursed from birth, born into poverty, the son of a penniless artisan. My parents did nothing but quarrel all day long. What little money they had was never spent on me. Okay, this is air. So I set about studying, to better myself, to one day escape from that hellhole. And you eventually became a communications officer. I admire your determination. But then you decided to try to sell government secrets. Why? Isn't it obvious? Because I wanted money. Even now, years later, the nightmares of my life in the slums wake me in the small hours. I wanted to drown them out, with more money than anyone who lived in that squalor could ever imagine. Then one day, I met him. Mr. Magnus McGilded. Yeah, a fiend with a square talent. So you are. I've money to throw you away if you're interested. All you need to do is go along with me little plan now. I was to steal the ministry's telegraphic message logs, and McGilded would buy them for a handsome sum. As I was responsible for inspections of the ministry's communications office, it was a simple enough task. The lure of the devil's offerings, how easy it is to succumb. But you must surely have realized the seriousness of the crime you are committing. And for that reason, I took great length to ensure that my actions were untraceable. By using the music box. My father was a brickmaker, though my mother divorced him when I was still a child. Yes, Mr. Mason Milver. That's right, he was very skilled with his hands. He'd once been a music box maker's apprentice. I imagined his skills would be sufficient to create a machine that could generate Morse code. So I thought to out my father again, to employ his services. I thought out my father. Okay. It was the first time I'd seen him since I left the slums 10 years earlier. Look at you, Ashley. What a fine gent you've become, eh? He was a different man to the one in my memory. A thin, frail old man. But poverty had never broken him, never corrupted him like it had me. I was sure that he wouldn't help me if I told him the real reason. So I made up a story. I've got some work for you, father. I need some music box discs made. Music box discs, eh? A musician friend of mine has written some music he wants to sell to the public. I've brought the score with me. There are two, actually. I'd be delighted, son. It's been 20 years since I did any work like this, so... Fetch my tools, would you? They're in the loft. That's how I had him make the two discs. Thereby splitting the information in two. You were taking considerable precautions indeed. It was to protect myself as much as anything. It meant that I could deal with Mr. McGilded in two separate transactions. The first involved the first of the two discs and the music box for playing them. I exchanged them with McGilded for 10 guineas. Then, on receipt of the second disc, he would pay 1,000 guineas. So, what happened on the omnibus 2 months ago? Was the second part of the deal, the exchange of the second disc. Yes, I sold the man information to Ray a number of times already. But it seems he became reluctant to part with his money. But that doesn't quite make sense, Mr. Graham. For why was it that on the omnibus 2 months ago, your father, Mr. Milburn, was the one dealing with Mr. McGilded and not yourself? When I received the 1,000 guineas after my first completed dealings with Mr. McGilded, I decided to give 200 to my father for his troubles. But my father realized something that was amiss. In time, he worked out that I must be involved in something dubious. And when he did, he said to me, "Next time there's an exchange, you'll let your old man do it, understand? Otherwise, I won't take your money anymore." Oh no, und dann hat es gemacht. That was my father's way of dealing with it, I suppose. Climb into the omnibus, hand over the second disc, and take the money from McGilded. That's it. He had no idea what was actually on the discs that I'd asked him to make. He never knew. Just like I never know why everything went so horribly wrong that night. All I know is that the disc was taken from him, and he never returned home. It was only then that I found out what sort of a monster McGilded really was. So after 10 years of not once uttering it, I swore on my father's name. To exact revenge. Revenge? As anyone with even the remotest knowledge of the man will no doubt be able to imagine, McGilded brought all his wealth and influence to bear in the most despicable of ways. To crush any semblance of justice in his trial. The crime scene was tampered with, evidence was fixed, and witnesses were bribed. The trial 2 months ago was a farce from start to finish. My feet had barely touched British soil back then, and I walked into that hornet's nest, completely unaware of the sinister background to it all. I made plenty of money out of my dealings with McGilded by then, so I spared nothing in my arrangements 2 months ago. I knew exactly who to hire. If you're willing to pay the price, there are people in the city willing to do anything you ask. McGilded himself had shown me that. Are you saying that? I think you have the picture now. After he twisted everything to his favor in his courtroom to ensure that he walked free. Oh, hat das gemacht. I took matters into my own hands and delivered the justice that monsters deserve. Und wir haben die ganze Zeit Barock verdächtigt. Wir haben die ganze Zeit Van Sieks verdächtigt, aber war das, okay. That tragic accident following the trial here 2 months ago was planned and executed by yours truly. McGilded's death that day was caused by this man. Everything is ready, sir, if you'd like to follow me into the courtroom. What's this, officer? It's sooner than I was led to believe. I hope it's not inconvenient, sir. There were some changes to the schedule. Well, I must be making tracks now. Ich habe damals noch gedacht, dass er irgendwie noch einen anderen Fall hat, irgendwas Finanzielles oder so, den er das erklären muss. Aber dann kam ja das, und das war schon shocking. "'Tis time for the inspection. They're going to examine the omnibus again, so I'm told. I asked if I could be present for it myself." So that policeman who came to tell McGill that he could examine the omnibus again. That's right, an imposter, hired by me. Kinda sus. McGill did use his wealth to manipulate the trial. He paid people to adulterate the omnibus with all manner of false evidence. He threatened witnesses to lie in their testimony. So I gave the man a taste of his own medicine. Once the omnibus was doused in paraffin, one of my sham policemen ushered McGill inside and sent him on a one-way journey to hell. An eye for an eye. That's how I avenged my father's death. A spine-chilling account indeed. But that wasn't the end of it for me. There was a loose end, you see? A loose end? Yes, I should think it's obvious. The second disc, which my father had taken to exchange with McGill. Ah, yes. There was indeed no mention of it in the man's trial 2 months ago. Clearly because it had been removed from the scene of the crime. When I realized it was missing, I remembered something. Something from the first time I dealt with McGill. This is the first of the 2 discs and the music box you need to play them. Well, look at that now. What an ingenious little invention. So then, as promised, 10 guineas for you, young man. What's this? Windybank's pawnbrokery. Aye, it's a pawnbroker's ticket, so it is. You can use it to redeem an article I've deposited there for you. There's no need to give a name, just hand over the ticket and tell the fiend the what's worth. I put the jewel in pawn for you. It'll fetch a good 10 guineas if you sell it, so it will. I've never heard of a pawnbrokery being used in quite that way before. Have you not, Mr. Graydon? London's pawnbrokeries are very useful places, you know? Each one is like an extremely secure vault. Also hat dann geschlussfolgert, dass auch die Disc da sein muss. So I knew that if he'd taken steps to hide the disc, it would be in that pawnbrokery somewhere. And that on the night he killed my father, he must have entrusted the ticket to someone. Yes, to Gina. I remember now that when we first met you at Windybank that afternoon 2 days ago, you had a description of Mr. Straight written down. How did you know who you were looking for? From the trial, that pickpocket's testimony was clearly peculiar. Anyone could see that. I realized immediately that she was another of McGilda's pawns, that he must have threatened her somehow. I was fairly convinced it would be her who had the ticket. I started to make some enquiries. I had a strong suspicion the girl would come out of the woodwork on the redemption deadline. And he was absolutely right. And yes, sure enough, she did. All I needed to do was to wait until the girl went to Windybank to redeem the articles. But unfortunately, she redeemed only McGilda's overcoat and the 1 disc that was in its pocket. The all-important music box with the 2nd disc inside was missing. Because it had already been forfeited 2 days earlier. But I was unaware of that fact. Had I not been, I could have avoided my nighttime excursion. Meanwhile, as our investigation into the stolen government secret was progressing, we picked up on the fact that McGill was involved. Inspector, you've recovered fast. My orders were to recover the stolen information as quickly as possible. So we started gathering the fella's possessions and examining whatever we could lay our hands on. We had a full-scale investigation going on at the yard, but we had to keep it as quiet as we could. Then, when the inspector here took the disc from me in the pawnbrokery that day, I become nervous. I was sure the music box and the second disc were still there in the shop somewhere, so I knew that it was a race against time. I had to find those articles before the police did. So that's what prompted you to break into the place that same night. With the help of your old friends, the Skalkin brothers. What happened that night in the pawnbrokery, I can only describe as a nightmare. While Nash and Ringo were searching the counter, I located the music box I'd sold to McGilded on the shelves of forwarded articles. And the second disc was inside. Yes, I slipped it into my pocket with a very deep sigh of relief. But then, something entirely unexpected happened. What are you doing in my shop? A gunshot rang out in the shop, and I felt a sharp pain in my left arm. The broker fired his gun, and the bullet pierced your limb. Yes, exactly. But unfortunately, I decided to bring my own gun with me that night, just in case. Uh-oh. Before I knew what was happening, I'd fired back. The man had already turned to flee. I hadn't intended to fire in his direction, much less kill him. But unfortunately for both of us, the bullet hit home. It struck him in the middle of his back as he fled through the storeroom door for refuge. A sorry, sorry tale. It all took place in the blink of an eye. I don't imagine Nash and Ringo even realized what had happened at first. I was terrified, so I fled. And that's the whole story. That's everything that happened at Windybanks on that wretched night. Okay. Ja, sowas lohnt sich nie. Earlier, you called McGilded a monster. A man who used his wealth and influence to distort the facts and escape justice for the crime of murder. What tragic irony. For what you have done, is exactly the same. You've become the very monster you saw and despised so deeply in McGilded. Ich dachte, jetzt kommt die Star Wars quote. You've become the very monster you swore to destroy. Yes, I think I have.